Get your hands off that wheel, old man, or I'll drag you out myself. Officer Dan Carver's voice cut through the humid evening air, sharp and venomous as he leaned into the open window of the rusted pickup truck. His flashlight beam danced across the face of Ezekiel, Zeke Turner, a 70-year-old black farmer whose weathered hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale against his dark skin. "You deaf or just stupid?" Officer Mike Hensley chimed in, standing a few feet back, his hand resting casually on the holster at his hip. "We said step out. Now." Zeke's eyes deep set and framed by decades of sun and struggle flicked between the two white policemen. His voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, carried the weight of a man who'd seen worse. "I ain't done nothing wrong, officers. Just driving home from the market." Carver snorted, his lips curling into a sneer. "Home? You mean that shack you call a farm? Move it, boy, before I make you regret it." The word boy hung in the air like a slap, deliberate and cruel. Zeke's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. He'd heard it before too many times over 7 decades in Hollow County, Georgia, where the pines whispered secrets and the law often bent to the will of men like Carver and Hensley. The dirt road stretched out behind the truck, empty under the fading twilight. No witnesses to what was unfolding. Hollow County was a place where time seemed to limp along, caught between the ghosts of the past and the uneasy present. It was 2025, but for many the old ways still lingered, prejudices baked into the soil as deeply as the red clay. Zeke Turner had lived his entire life on the family farm, a modest 40 acres his grandfather had bought after the Civil War. He grew peaches, raised chickens, and sold eggs and preserves at the Saturday market in town. To most, he was a quiet fixture, a man who kept to himself and bothered no one. To Carver and Hensley, he was a target. The two officers had been partners for 6 years, their reputations built on a mix of bravado and unchecked power. Carver, 38, was the louder of the pair, a broad-shouldered man with a quick temper and a penchant for throwing his weight around. Hensley, 42, was leaner, quieter, but no less dangerous, a man who preferred to let Carver lead, while he watched, calculating, always ready to back his partner's play. They patrolled the back roads of Hollow County with a sense of ownership, their badges shields for their biases. That evening, they'd spotted Zeke's truck crawling along Hollow Road, its tail light flickering. It was a minor infraction, barely worth a stop, but Carver had been in a foul mood after a dressing down from their sergeant over a botched report. Hensley, sensing his partner's need to blow off steam, had pointed out the truck. "There's old Zeke," he'd said with a smirk. "Let's have some fun." Now, as Zeke sat rigid in the driver's seat, Carver's flashlight lingered on his face, searching for a reaction. "You gonna make this hard, or you gonna do what you're told?" Carver said, his voice low, almost playful. Zeke's gaze didn't waver. "I'm asking you, officer, what I done wrong. That's all." Hensley laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You exist, that's what. Now get out before we pull you out." Zeke's hands slowly lifted from the wheel palms, up a gesture of compliance, but not surrender. He opened the door and stepped onto the gravel, his work boots crunching softly. At 70, he was wiry but strong, his frame honed by years of labor. His flannel shirt was patched at the elbows, his jeans faded but clean. He stood straight, meeting their eyes, refusing to shrink. Carver stepped closer, too close, his breath hot with the faint tang of chewing tobacco. "You think you're something, don't you, strutting around like you own this county? You're nothing but a—" Dan Hensley cut in, his tone sharp but cautious, glancing down the road. "Ease up. Let's just write him up and go." Carver ignored him, his eyes locked on Zeke. "You hear me, old man. You're nothing. Never were, never will be." Zeke's voice was calm, almost eerily so. "You got your badge, son. Don't mean you got my soul." The words hit Carver like a spark to dry grass. His face twisted, and for a moment it seemed he might swing, but Hensley grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Enough, Dan. Let's roll." They wrote Zeke a ticket for the tail light, tossing it onto the seat of his truck with a sneer. As they walked back to their cruiser, Carver called over his shoulder, "Fix that light, boy, or next time we won't be so nice." Zeke stood by his truck, watching as the cruiser's taillights disappeared into the dusk. He didn't move for a long time, the ticket crumpled in his hand, the weight of the encounter settling into his bones. He'd faced men like Carver and Hensley before, but each time chipped away at something deep inside. Still, he climbed back into his truck and drove home, the stars beginning to prick the sky above. Unbeknownst to Carver and Hensley, the Hollow County Sheriff's Department had a new chief sworn in just 3 days earlier. Marcus Turner, 45, was Zeke's only son a man who'd left Hollow County 2 decades ago to escape its suffocating history. He'd built a career in Atlanta, rising through the ranks of the city's police department with a reputation for integrity and unrelenting focus. When the sheriff's position opened in Hollow County, Marcus had returned driven by a mix of duty and a desire to reshape the place that had shaped him. Marcus was nothing like his father in demeanor. Where Zeke was quiet and reserved, Marcus was commanding, his deep voice carrying authority without effort. But they shared the same unyielding sense of justice, forged in the crucible of a county that had never fully embraced them. Marcus had taken office promising reform, a vow that had already stirred unease among some of the department's old guard. That night, Zeke didn't call his son. He didn't speak of the stop to anyone, not even his wife Clara, who noticed the tightness in his face as he sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee in silence. But Hollow County was small, and secrets had a way of slipping through the cracks. The next morning at the Saturday market, Clara mentioned the ticket to her friend Mabel, who ran the preserves stall next to Zeke's. Mabel's nephew, a part-time deputy, had overheard Carver and Hensley laughing about putting old Zeke in his place at the station. By noon, the story had reached Marcus, delivered by a concerned deputy who'd heard it secondhand. Marcus was in his office, a cramped room still cluttered with his predecessor's files, when Deputy Sarah Gaines knocked. Sarah, 29, was one of the few deputies Marcus trusted implicitly, a sharp, no-nonsense officer who'd grown up in Hollow County but had no patience for its uglier traditions. "Chief," she said, closing the door behind her. "You need to hear this." She recounted what she'd heard, her voice steady but laced with disgust. Marcus listened, his face unreadable, though his hands clasped on the desk tightened until his knuckles blanched. When Sarah finished, he leaned back, his eyes fixed on a point beyond the wall. "You sure it was Carver and Hensley?" he asked, his voice low. "Positive," Sarah said. "They were bragging about it like it was a damn game." Marcus nodded, a single sharp motion. "Thank you, Sarah. Keep this quiet for now." She hesitated, then added, "Chief, your dad, is he okay?" "He's tough," Marcus said, but the words felt hollow. He didn't know yet what his father was feeling, and that gnawed at him. After Sarah left, Marcus sat in silence, the weight of the moment pressing against him. He'd known coming back to Hollow County would mean confronting men like Carver and Hensley, but he hadn't expected it to hit so close so soon. His father had always been a rock, a man who bore the world's injustices with quiet dignity. The thought of him humiliated alone on that dirt road lit a fire in Marcus's chest. He picked up the phone and dialed his parents' number. Clara answered, her voice warm but cautious. "Marcus, you coming by soon?" "Soon, Mama," he said. "Is Pop there?" Clara paused, sensing the edge in his tone. "He's out in the orchard. What's wrong?" "Just need to talk to him," Marcus said. "I'll be by later." He hung up, staring at the badge on his desk. It was new, polished, the words, Sheriff Hollow County, gleaming under the fluorescent light. He'd taken this job to make a difference, but now it felt personal, a test of whether he could protect the man who'd raised him. Zeke was pruning peach trees when Marcus arrived that afternoon. The orchard was his sanctuary, a place where the world's noise faded amid the rustle of leaves and the sweet scent of ripening fruit. Marcus found him near the back of the property, his father's silhouette framed against the sinking sun. "Pop," Marcus called, stepping over a row of fallen branches. Zeke turned, wiping sweat from his brow with a handkerchief. "Didn't expect you today, son." Marcus stopped a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, searching his father's face for signs of the previous night. "Heard about what happened on Hollow Road." Zeke's expression didn't change, but his hand slowed, the pruning shears glinting in the light. "Ain't nothing new, Marcus. Just how it is sometimes." "Not anymore," Marcus said, his voice firm. "Not here. Not with me in charge." Zeke set the shears down, his eyes meeting his son's. "You can't fix everything, boy. Some things just are." "They called you Boy Pop." Marcus said, the word bitter on his tongue. "They disrespected you, threatened you. That's not just how it is. That's a crime." Zeke sighed, a sound heavy with years of carrying burdens unspoken. "I'm fine, Marcus. Let it go." "I can't," Marcus said, "and I won't." They stood in silence, the orchard humming with cicadas. Marcus wanted to say more, to promise his father that he'd tear down every ounce of hate in this county, but the words felt too big, too fragile. Instead, he said, "I'm going to handle it. You don't have to carry this one." Zeke nodded, a faint flicker of pride in his eyes. "You do what you got to do, son." Back at the station, Marcus began digging. He pulled the dashcam footage from Carver and Hensley's cruiser, a grainy video that captured every word of the stop. The audio was damning Carver's slurs, Hensley's complicity, the casual cruelty of it all. Marcus watched it 3 times, each viewing hardening his resolve. He cross-referenced their reports, finding discrepancies that suggested they'd falsified details to justify the stop. It was sloppy, arrogant work, the kind of thing men did when they thought they were untouchable. He called Sarah into his office. "I want internal affairs on this," he said, quietly, "and I want Carver and Hensley's personnel files. Every complaint, every write-up." Sarah nodded. "You're going after them hard, aren't you?" "They went after my father," Marcus said. "They don't get to walk away from that." Over the next 2 days, Marcus built his case. The dash cam footage was the cornerstone, but the personnel files revealed a pattern: complaints from other black residents, allegations of excessive force, all swept under the rug by the previous sheriff. Marcus interviewed witnesses, including Mabel's nephew, who confirmed the officer's boasts. He moved carefully, knowing that Carver and Hensley had allies in the department, men who'd bristle at a new chief shaking things up. Carver and Hensley, oblivious to the storm brewing, continued their patrols, their swagger intact. They joked about Zeke at the station, unaware that their words were being noted by deputies loyal to Marcus. Their arrogance was their undoing. Men who believed they were above reproach rarely saw the fall coming. On the 3rd day, Marcus summoned Carver and Hensley to his office. The room was stark, the blinds half drawn, casting slatted shadows across the floor. Marcus sat behind his desk, the dash cam footage paused on his laptop. Sarah stood by the door, her presence a silent warning. Carver entered first, his posture, loose, a smirk tugging at his lips. Hensley followed, his eyes darting between Marcus and Sarah, sensing something off. "Sit," Marcus said, his voice like steel. Carver raised an eyebrow but complied, slouching in the chair. Hensley sat stiffly, his hands clasped in his lap. "You know why you're here?" Marcus asked. Carver shrugged. "No clue, Chief. You tell us." Marcus leaned forward, his gaze pinning Carver. "Hollow Road, 3 nights ago. Ezekiel Turner. Ring any bells?" Hensley's face paled slightly, but Carver's smirk didn't waver. "Old man with a busted tail light." "Yeah, we stopped him, wrote him up. What's the problem?" "The problem," Marcus said, turning the laptop to face them, "is this." He pressed play. The footage filled the room, Carver's voice booming through the speakers. "You're nothing but a—" The slur echoed unmistakable. Hensley's laughter followed, cold and complicit. Carver's smirk faded. Hensley shifted in his seat, his hands tightening. "You falsified your report," Marcus said, pausing the video. "You harassed a civilian. You used racial slurs. You violated department policy, state law, and basic human decency." Carver leaned forward, his voice low. "You don't know how things work around here, do you, Chief? That's just talk. Ain't nobody gonna care about some old farmer." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You don't know who that farmer is, do you?" Hensley frowned, confusion flickering across his face. Carver scoffed. "What are your cousin or something?" "He's my father," Marcus said, the words dropping like a hammer. The room went still. Carver's jaw slackened, his bravado crumbling. Hensley's eyes widened, realization dawning. "You're done," Marcus said. "Both of you. You're suspended pending investigation, but I'll be straight with you. Internal Affairs has everything they need. You'll be lucky to keep your pensions." Carver shot to his feet, his face red. "You can't do this. We've been here longer than you've been alive. You think you can just—" "Sit down," Sarah snapped, stepping forward. Carver froze, his chest heaving. Hensley grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Dan, don't!" Marcus stood, his presence filling the room. "You're not just fired. You're going to answer for every complaint, every violation, every time you thought you could hide behind that badge. Now get out of my station." The fallout was swift. By the end of the week, Carver and Hensley were officially terminated. Their badges stripped, their names splashed across local news as the department's first major scandal under Marcus's tenure. Some in the county grumbled, calling it heavy-handed, but others, especially those who'd felt the sting of the officer's prejudice, saw it as a reckoning. Zeke never spoke of the incident again, but at the market the following Saturday, he stood a little taller, his smile a little brighter. Clara noticed, and when Marcus visited that evening, she hugged him longer than usual. "You did good, son," she said. Marcus nodded, his eyes on his father, who was pruning trees in the orchard, the setting sun painting him in gold. For the first time since he'd taken the badge, Marcus felt he'd honored it. The pines of Hollow County whispered on, but their secrets were changing, one reckoning at a time.